Hi everybody, this is Paul B, and thank you very much for watching this video in particular, because in this video I want to explain to you what Meannesota is and why I need to escape from Meannesota. And I want to say from the outset, without hyperbole, without exaggeration, no joke, no lie, in all seriousness, cross my heart, my life depends on getting out of Meannesota, and fast. My life. Every day that's going by recently, I'm starting to realize that fact. Now, trying to tell this story, the analogy I use is imagine that you met somebody who had never heard of World War II, and you had to explain World War II to them in all of its facets, all the countries involved, all of the animosities, all the political connivings, the Treaty of Versailles, the rise of the Nazi Party, the rise of every other group, Mussolini, Roosevelt, everybody, Japan. And you had to tell the stories of all the people, the millions of people who died in that war, had arms and legs cut off in that war. You had to describe the families of those people, whether they died or not, the impact it had on them. Children growing up without a father because they got shot in the head on some battlefield for no good reason. And most of all, the sheer degree of atrocity that occurred during World War II. How do you explain all of that to somebody who doesn't even know anything about World War II in the 15 minutes that YouTube gives me, or the 2 minutes that the New Brighton, Minnesota City Council gave me to tell them? How do I explain this? I don't know. This is more than 50 takes, 50 takes that I have tried to get this video done, and I go way over 15 minutes every time. So I'm going to try instead to do this really, really briefly and refer you to my website, because all of the information is there. All the detail, the story, it's told as a story. I put so much effort into that website precisely to tell this story. So please visit and read. But it boils down to a perfect trifecta, 3 factors that came together to absolutely destroy my life, burn it to the ground, like I said, to the point where I will not survive. The person you're looking at right now, the kid who used to ride his bicycle up the big hill near our home and climb the big tree, who's had 48 years of life experiences and had planned to have so many more. The guy you're seeing on this camera is not going to be alive a month from now if people don't do something. I've spent 3 years trying to get Minnesotans to do anything, and they have consistently refused. They don't give a damn about anything, let alone whether an outsider, a transplant to Minnesota, whether or not that person lives or dies. 3 years I've tried to get them to do anything, and they will do nothing. That gives you a hint of what Meannesota is. But let me tell you about this trifecta. The first thing is neighbor noise. Excruciatingly loud, violent, persistent, constant neighbor noise. Prevented me from sleeping, prevented me from thinking, prevented me from working, prevented me from enjoying my life, prevented me from using the apartment I was paying money for. I was a prisoner in one room, one corner of one room, for 3 years. Never even got to use the living room, the kitchen, in many cases even the bathroom. I had a bottle in my bedroom to piss in so that I didn't have to go out there and be abused by the sheer degree of industrial strength noise 24 hours a day from these people. Now, a lot of people have dealt with rotten, loud neighbors. I know that. I would never belittle their experiences, because I know they have endured, in terms of the noise itself, they've endured what I've endured. And I'm not going to say that the noise was worse in that sense. It was worse for me personally for a couple of reasons. One is because I don't own a television. I didn't have the net at home. My entire life, the reason for my existence is projects. I do things all the time. I write, I record, I learn, I read, I create. I'm a creative person. That's my existence. And what I was creating was my legacy to leave behind in this world when I'm gone. And those people took it away from me. For 3 years, since I was a child, that's what I've done with my life, since I could walk and talk. But for those last 3 years in Minnesota, nothing. I haven't created anything. The closest thing to it is this website, and this took me 1.5 years to get this far. Something that probably would have taken me between 2 and 6 weeks, I would say, if I was able to actually do the work. They made my life miserable. I mean, I have not wanted to be alive for the last 3 years, but I don't want to die either. I just want to get the hell out of Minnesota so I can have a life that's worth living. So anyway, neighbor noise, excruciating neighbor noise. The second thing is the complete and utter failure of every Minnesota official or authority, from the very bottom, my landlord, to the very top, my state legislator. Over 3 years, not one of them, not only did they not stop this noise, but they didn't try to stop the noise. But not only that, they had legal and professional obligations to do so. They betrayed their professional and legal obligations while accepting salaries for doing that job. I'll give you 2 examples. My lease agreement clearly says in section B7 that my neighbors may not make this type of noise and may not harass their neighbors in the way that they did. When I paid my landlord $60,000 over the time that I lived there, I didn't just pay rent. I paid for his professional services as a property manager, which includes enforcing the lease. He refused to do it, period, outright, looking me straight in the eye. He's not going to do it. He instead blamed me. Somehow it was my fault that these people, while I'm just sitting in a chair without making a sound, were shaking the foundations, blowing out light bulbs in my kitchen. They blew out my refrigerator. I didn't have a refrigerator the last 2 years I lived there because of the sheer violence of how much they shook this building. And this guy had the audacity to look at me and say, "You're hypersensitive to noise." Well, listen to the noise recordings on my website, and you tell me whether I was hypersensitive. Yeah, right. A rock and roll drummer who can easily sleep on a jet airplane right next to the jet engines. No. That doesn't stand. That's his way of avoiding doing his job. That man put in so much more effort to avoid doing his job than he would have had to do his job. But one of the characteristics of the so-called Minnesota nice is that people hate confrontation. And I'm suffering for it. Example 2 from this total negligence. The New Brighton Police Department. I didn't want to call them to begin with. From the time I moved in, 6 years before I called them, I didn't hear a good word about them. I didn't have any good experiences with them. These guys were something to fear to begin with. I didn't want to call them for help. That was it's calling the fox to the hen house. I mean, why would I call these guys? So I went to the city council. The city council tells the police what to do. There I was on camera. Now remember, when people are diabolical, they do things differently when people are watching than when people are not watching. So while I was there, they were nice enough. Not really. The mayor was kind of an ass, to be honest. He gave me 2 minutes to explain all of this. At least you're getting 15. And then he sent me to the police. He said, "Call the police." It's like, gee, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I? Gee, I'm such a moron. How could I not have thought of calling the police? Maybe it's because your police are a bunch of thugs. But because we're on camera, I ended up talking. Now, the mayor's name is Jacobson. One of the city council members is named Jacobson, and the police chief is named Jacobson. Can you sing the Dukes of Hazzard theme song? That's what I'm dealing with, right? So the chief of police and a police sergeant, really nice to me, the city council's there watching them through the glass talk to me, really nice to me, putting their hand on my shoulder, and the sergeant said, "If you call us, it will stop." with an emphasis on the word will. And I know that because I went out to my car and I wrote it down in my journal. A few days later, I called the police. Guess what? It didn't stop. Instead, what happened was exactly what I expected from that police department. The officer strutted his stuff in there with his... It's the 21st century, and he has a shaved head, like Duke Nukem, belt full of deadly toys. I wanted Andy Griffith or someone from the Barney Miller police house. I wanted someone who actually gave a damn about other people. Instead, I get this thing entering my home, just humiliating me, degrading me, blaming me, and justifying everything that the perpetrators were doing, protecting the perpetrators. Same thing my landlord did. Now here's the thing. From my landlord to my state legislature over 3 years, that's what I got from every single person in Minnesota. Without one exception. There are more than 5 million people in the state of Minnesota. In terms of people in official capacity who had a responsibility to do something about this. In 3 years, not one of them did anything. All of them blamed the victim and protected the perpetrators. All of them put more effort into doing nothing than to just do their job. All of them were negligent from the bottom to the top. And that's what makes this so surreal. And that's what broke my heart and broke my spirit and left me thinking, what can I do? Who do you call when the police don't even enforce the law? If law enforcement doesn't enforce the law, who will? If I go out and try to do it myself, I'm a vigilante. Then I'm a lawbreaker, and I'm just guessing here, but I bet they would enforce it if I went up and just beat the shit out of the people. There's nothing you can do when you've got a system like that. The third part of this trifecta was my employer. Again, I'm in Minnesota, and I'm an outsider. The people I worked with on the ground were basically pretty good. In fact, there was some awesome teamwork there. I'm very proud of what we did. And I liked working with a lot of those people, a lot of them, but not the management, because this is the thing in Minnesota. These people are so socially isolated that it has become, there's a dominant cult mentality. Now, this is where it gets hard to talk about. Not every Minnesotan is a bad person. I would never say that. That wouldn't make any sense for me to say that. That kind of stereotyping, I have no use for it. Neither do you. You shouldn't have any use for it. But the reality of cult mentality is a whole other story. If you don't understand how that works, then I suggest you take a look at the only thing I've seen that even rivals what I call Meannesota, which is Scientology. And in Scientology, founder L. Ron Hubbard, I'll try to put it up on the screen here, gave an ethics, what he calls an ethics directive, where he tells Scientologists to, if I recall, lie, deceive, sue, and destroy suppressives, which are outsiders of the cult, without any punishment for the Scientologist. Now that is exactly the experience I've had in Minnesota for 8 years. And particularly in the last 3 years, where I actually felt compelled to call upon them for assistance. For the first 5 years, I didn't need their help with anything. But once that noise started, I needed their help. And what I got, maybe lied to, maybe deceived. Well, they haven't sued me yet. Maybe they will for putting up this website. But maybe destroyed. Like I said, I may not be alive a month from now. Yeah, they destroyed me. I'm losing the love letters I got as a teenager. I'm losing everything I have to remember my parents by. And 8 months ago, I was professionally employed, I had life savings, and I was in an apartment that I'd lived in for 8 years. Yeah, I would say they've destroyed my life. And they've done so through negligence, through mean-spirited, passive-aggressiveness, which is what a lot of people call Minnesota nice. I call it Meannesota. My time's up. Guess what? I couldn't explain World War II to you, could I, in 15 minutes? Please. I can't beg you enough. Visit my website. I put so much work into telling the story there, completely with documentation. I need help to save my life. No joke, no exaggeration, No hyperbole. Please don't be a Minnesotan. Do the right thing. Show some human decency and help me out. www.meannesota.com. Thank you.